My name is Elvis. Welcome to Power Your Story, a podcast from After School Matters in Creator Imposter Studio in Chicago. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Power Your Story. My name is Justus Phillips, and we got a guest here today. Her name is.
Maggie Arthur.
So, what do you do for your work?
For my job, I am a sexual violence prevention educator, which means that I teach young people starting all the way in kindergarten and going all the way through high school how to have healthy relationships. I teach them about consent, how to ask for consent, how to give consent, and I teach them how to support each other in if maybe we're in an unhealthy relationship, what we can do to help.
That's very awesome.
Thanks.
Why is important to you?
My work is important to me because when I was a teenager, my parents didn't feel comfortable talking to me about healthy relationships and unhealthy relationships. And as a result, I was in a really unhealthy relationship. And it was totally just because I didn't know any better. And so after I got out of that and was in a better headspace, I knew that I wanted to be someone who could work to prevent that from happening to other teens.
I was like that too, in the same way. I'm still trying to learn, so I'm still trying to get a grasp of it. But thank you for mentioning that question.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is D'Angelo. What is a relationship and what does that mean to you?
That's a really good question, D'Angelo. I would define a relationship as any connection or anything between individuals. So a relationship can be in a family. It can be boyfriend, girlfriend, 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 boyfriend, boyfriend. It can be the relationship you have with like your teachers or mentors. So it's the way people are connected. Yeah, because it can look a lot of different ways.
Okay. So, how do you get a girlfriend or boyfriend?
Ooh, that's a really tough question. I think that there's a lot of different ways that you can go about getting a boyfriend or girlfriend, but I think that where you have to start is getting to know that person and figuring out if they're interested in you too, right?
Right.
So you could be like figuring out if they're into you too by maybe you try to talk to them more. Or maybe you try to start flirting with them a little bit and picking up on if they are returning that or if they are seeming like that's not what they're into. If they're seeming like they're not interested, then, take the L and keep going.
That's it?
I feel like there's a lot to it, but as long as you're starting from a place of like you have a genuine respect for this person, you have a real interest in getting to know them, and you have a real interest in treating them well, then you're going to be able to have some kind of relationship, even if that's a friendship or if that's like a dating relationship.
Is it possible that someone could come to you if they like you, and how can you be more attracted to people?
Ooh, I feel like that's like the question, right? So I think some things that people tend to find attractive, and it's going to be different for each person, right? Like you may not think the same things are attractive that I think are attractive, that you think are attractive, right? But I think some things that people tend to agree on, people tend to think that confidence is attractive. People tend to think that having your stuff together, being smart, being on track, having goals and meeting those goals, I think those are things people find attractive. And I think that a lot of the stuff that people find attractive in other people are things that you got to sort of cultivate for yourself. You got to find that in yourself. And then you'll start to show that confidence and that happiness and all of those things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Hi, Amari.
Huh.
Nice to meet you.
Good too. Well, some of your favorite tips for relationships.
Some of my favorite tips for relationships, for a healthy relationship, is mutual respect and equal or shared power and control of the relationship. And so knowing when you need to share that power, knowing when you need to give over that power. So would an example be helpful?
Yeah.
An example of that is my partner and I, we like to go out to eat a lot. but I'm vegetarian and he isn't. So when we're picking a restaurant, he has to give me a little more power to make the choice because we might go to a restaurant there's nothing on the menu I can eat. So that's an instance where I might have more power, but it's to benefit both of us in the end, right? So that we can both go have dinner together. But then maybe on the flip side, if he was to say, you know, I'm sick of eating these vegetables. I don't want to go to that awful vegetarian restaurant anymore. You don't get to decide. That would be hurtful for me, right? Because not only am I not getting to enjoy any dinner, but also he's then saying that like my choices aren't cool with him. And so that would be an example of where power is unequal in a really negative way, right? So tips for a healthy relationship are like mutual respect, mutual power, and an interest in getting to know that person. I would say those are tips that build a healthy relationship.
Well, can you do you take someone on a date?
Oh, I think it's up to what you like. Like, what do you like to do, Amari?
Watch TV.
Okay. Do you like watching movies?
Yes.
So a date idea for you, Amari, could be taking somebody out to the movies. And then you could maybe get like food afterwards or something and talk about what you saw in the movie. Like, did you like it? Did you think it was funny? And then that way you're enjoying something together and then you're getting to know each other because you're having that conversation afterwards.
Okay. How can you be a cinnamon to a girl? How can you so respect in relationship?
So I think being a gentleman and showing respect goes back to sort of what we were talking about before about power and control and knowing when you need to give them some more power, some more control over the relationship, and when it makes more sense for you to have more, or when it makes the most sense for it to be totally equal, right? But some things I think that, I mean, I can only speak as me, who is a girl, things that I think are respectful or make me think that someone's a gentleman is if they practice really good consent and not in like a sexual way, but just in like a, you know, asking me what I like, asking me what I want to do. And if I ever say no, they stop right away and make sure that I feel okay. So those are things that make me feel like I'm being respected and that that person's a gentleman.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, my name is David. What can you do if someone you are dating is blowing up in your phone? Yeah.
So, David, just to make sure I'm interpreting your question, when you say blowing up your phone, like, can you give me an example?
Well, like constant emails and voicemails and everything else, like loud voicemails, being loud, stuff like that.
Yeah. So they're taking up a lot of space on your phone.
Yeah.
They're like texting you, emailing you, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I just want to make sure. That's really tough. And honestly, when I'm talking about the difference between a healthy relationship and a not so healthy relationship, that's actually an example I usually give for an unhealthy relationship is if someone is taking up a lot of space in the relationship. On your phone is a way that that can happen. So I think that if someone is blowing up your phone before it gets to a point where you're feeling like scared or unsafe, because that's where it can go, is making sure that you're making your boundaries clear and telling them, like, this is crossing a line for me and this is not okay. And then if that keeps happening, if they cross that boundary, then we're in like a really unhealthy relationship territory, right? So that's when you got to identify some adults in your life who you can talk to about that, who can kind of support you and back you up. So like, who are some of those adults in your life who you know you can talk to?
The only people I could talk to is my mom, sometimes my dad.
Yeah, those are really good ones.
Yeah.
So I'd say, like, first, make it known that this is crossing a boundary for you. And then if they stop, you can maybe repair the relationship. If they don't stop, that's when you got to pull in some of those adults, maybe mom or dad.
Yeah. How can you keep a good hygiene in the relationship?
So do you mean hygiene like physical hygiene?
Yeah.
So what are some ways that you keep good hygiene like normally?
Like showering and also taking care of the hair and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe when you're in a
Right,
relationship, you want to do some of that stuff like more or differently, right? Like you
Yeah.
might want to like you're getting haircuts more often because you want it
Yeah.
to look really good. Maybe you wear cologne sometimes, like if you're going on a date, that kind of stuff. So I would say just use all those tools that you already use, but then maybe like think about what makes you feel really good and then do that.
All right. How did you get out of the relationship from a bad relationship or something troubles you like that?
When a relationship starts to feel unsafe or just bad, usually we pick up on that long before we decide to do anything about it. So like being really aware of how you feel in the relationship can be really important. So like maybe say they call you and before you pick up, you're just like, oh gosh, they're calling me again. Like that's not a good sign. Or maybe they are trying to hang out with you and you keep trying to find excuses to not hang out with them. Yeah. Or maybe just when you are hanging out with them afterwards, you feel like drained. Do you know what I mean? Like you feel like tired or you feel like you have no more to give after you hang out with this person. Those are all really big signs that like this is not a good situation. Even that happened way before it becomes unsafe. That's like when we start to see like maybe this relationship is unhealthy. Maybe I don't love being in this relationship anymore like I once did, way before it becomes unsafe. So my first sort of like answer to that is like pay attention when those things start to happen. And that's when we want to try to get out of that relationship because then we're still safe, right?
Yeah.
But then if maybe we're already past that, we're already in a place where it's starting to feel unhealthy or unsafe, then actually it can be really scary to leave that relationship.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's when, again, we want to make sure that we have the support of like our friends, our family, the adults in our lives who we trust, so that we don't feel like we have to do it alone. Because a lot of times it can be easier if we have that support, if we don't feel like we're alone.
How do you keep that relationship going?
Ooh, like a healthy relationship?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that I think is really important to keeping a healthy relationship going is having new experiences together. So that can be a really good way to connect to a person and also to get to know them is every time you're sharing a brand new experience. And that can be trying to cook a new food together. That can be going to see a movie you both are really excited about. That could be like maybe you've never gone to putt or miniature golf and like you try that together. Like anytime you can have an opportunity to do something new together is like going to strengthen your relationship. Okay. And then on top of all the foundation stuff of like respect, consent, boundaries, like all that good stuff, then just like keep it exciting.
Can the relationship feel like that your partner can be like stuff that they like to do or like shopping and stuff like that? Mm-hmm. And can the relationship be start like right there or the relationship can end just like that? How to like keep the relationship from starting getting bad? Like you start from the beginning and then go through the end.
So like taking it
to like the next level.
Sure. Yeah. So it sounds like you're saying like maybe you have talked to this person. It's clear that you both like each other. Maybe you've hung out a couple times, like outside of school or whatever, and you're ready to like ask them to be your person, your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever. Like you want to like take it to that next step. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's tough. I think that it boils down to, it's also like, you know, in a similar way of like how you would ask someone out on a date in the first place, you got to make sure that they are into it too, right? You got to be able to like communicate what you're looking for and make sure that they're okay with it too. That's another way of practicing consent. And I mean, it's scary, but I think you just got to do it. Like you just got to ask them and see if they're into it. And then if they say yes, then that's awesome, and you figure out what that's going to look like. But, like, they could also say no, and then maybe you just continue to have a friendship with that person.
Okay. Because I actually would like friends. I have girls as friends.
Yeah.
Because I ain't get to my other friends until later. As friends, I only have females as friends. That's the only thing I have. So, yeah. And it's nice to talk to you. And
Thanks, David. Nice to talk to you too.
yeah.
My name is Elvis, and my first question is, how can you protect yourself in a relationship?
That's a good question. When I hear that question, I interpret it as like, how can I make sure that my relationship feels good and healthy for me? Is that what you mean?
Yes, sort of like that. Because some relationships, like they're being like aggressive or fighting over something. Like this person is cheating on you, but the other person says, "No, it's not true. I'm not cheating on you." Anything like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. So protect yourself from getting hurt.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. I think that for one, well, no matter what kind of relationship it is, so it's someone you're dating, it's a friend, it's a work relationship even, you gotta have your boundaries and establish those like from the beginning, right? So something that I think a lot of people kind of forget about when they're about to go into any kind of relationship, they forget to stop and think to themselves like, what feels comfortable? What are my boundaries? Where is my line, right? And like really checking in with themselves before they start to explore what boundaries are with this other person. So anytime you're entering into a new relationship, like I said, boyfriend or girlfriend, even at work or whatever, making sure that you understand what your boundaries are and then communicate those to that person and kind of figure out like what's going to happen if those boundaries are crossed. So like, what are some of your boundaries?
I actually don't have one. I don't actually know. I don't actually have one.
So one that I have is I don't feel comfortable with somebody just like picking up my phone and like starting to look through it. Like that's a boundary I have. Would you say that you like how do you feel about that?
For me, no matters. Like
doesn't
you just
bother you?
like just checking your phone. Like
Yeah.
you're on a social media or you're just watching like find a video on YouTube.
Yeah?
Yeah, that doesn't matter me.
So our boundaries are different there, right?
Yeah.
So then if we were in a relationship and we didn't communicate that and say, you don't think looking at somebody else's phone is a big deal, so you pick mine up, but I said, I don't like that. So that's going to result in us getting into a fight or an argument, right? Because like we're not communicating our boundaries. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think the way you protect yourself is by like having those boundaries set, communicating them to that person, and then knowing that if they cross that boundary, like what are the things that I'm like, okay, we got to end this relationship? And what are the things where I can say, like, we can talk about it, we can figure it out, and it doesn't have to be the end.
Oh, okay. What can you do if you feel nervous about kissing someone for the first time?
Honestly, I think that feeling nervous before kissing someone is like a really awesome feeling because that means that you're really excited. Like nervousness is usually just a sign that you're excited about something.
Oh.
So like an example would be I really like scary movies, but I'm always so nervous before the movie starts. I'm always like sweating and like I can't sit still and I end up eating half the popcorn before the credits are through because I'm like so nervous. But then when I'm in it, it's really fun and exciting and like, you know, all of those good feelings. So I feel like if you're nervous about kissing someone or asking them out or something like that, that's probably just a sign that like inside you're really, really excited about it.
Oh.
So what are some things that you can do or that you already do if you're nervous about a test or like a job interview? Like what kinds of things do you do to calm yourself down?
Okay, so I think like I had some more, but I'll say a little bit. One, I can like just take deep breath. I can count by tens, like counting by numbers. I can do meditating. I can do squish my hands, or I wish I can go for a walk if I'm feeling not only like nervous. It can feel like you're feeling like frustrated or anxiety or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are all great. And I feel like if you're nervous about going on a date or kissing someone or something, you can do all those same things.
Okay. For me, like to be honest, I'll be nervous like to kiss someone for the first time. It would be like hard for me since I never kissed someone before. or date someone before with a girl. If I was like right now, I'll be really nervous.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's okay because probably they're going to be nervous too.
Oh,
I think
okay.
it can be helpful to keep that in mind that probably they're feeling just as nervous as you are.
Oh, okay. So my third question is, if you disagree with someone you are dating, what are some good tips to work it out?
That's a really good question. So I think that part of it is doing that foundation work, right? Of like talking about your boundaries, talking about what feels comfortable and safe for you. So knowing the difference between having a totally normal disagreement versus where someone is trying to make you like intentionally trying to make you feel bad, right? Or intentionally trying to hurt you or anything like that. So if that's the case, then knowing that that's not anything you've done. They're making a choice to try to hurt you, and that's not healthy. So that's one sort of extreme, right? But if it's just a totally like healthy, normal disagreement in a relationship, because like any kind of relationship, you're not going to get along all the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have like fights sometimes, and that's okay. As long as we can treat each other with respect and we can not escalate the fight. So like if we're just having a conversation, don't be yelling, don't get physical. Like those are ways we escalate things. So don't be calling somebody names, all that kind of stuff. So as long as we can like talk it out without escalating, then we can figure it out. We can work it out together. As long as it's not, like I said before, like one of those things that you've decided this is a boundary that like, if you cross this boundary, like that's it. Because in that case, you kind of have to make a decision of like, is this something I want to keep doing? Or should I maybe get out of this relationship?
Oh, okay. My fourth question is, who can we talk to if we have questions that we are not comfortable asking our parents or teachers about?
That's a really good one. When I was younger, the person who I felt the most comfortable talking to about stuff like this was actually my best friend's parents. So the reason why I think they were the people who made me feel comfortable was that they were still parents, so I felt like they were pretty smart. But since they weren't my parents, they were my friend's parents, there was like a level of separation there, right? Where I didn't have to feel so nervous about everything I said because like it's not like they could ground me or get me in trouble. So that was helpful. And also because my friend felt comfortable talking to them. So like I saw her asking them questions. I saw her feeling safe talking to them. So that made me feel like I could be safe talking to them. And that whenever I asked them questions, they would not treat me like what I was asking them was like the wildest thing they'd ever heard, right? Like they would talk to me like an adult and validate what I was feeling. So when you're picking who your adults are, like those safe people in your life, your parents are an obvious one, your teachers are really great, but then thinking about do you have memories of like any adults in your life who've made you feel like when you ask them a question that your question was valid, they stopped what they were doing to listen to you, they didn't just like brush you off or say like whatever you're asking is like not important, like those kinds of things. So maybe it's something you gotta think about for a little while, you know? It might not be something that comes up like right away.
That's a good advice that you tell me about.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Good. Nice to meet you, Karen.
Nice to meet you, Maggie. I got a question for you. So, how do you know if someone likes you, and what do you do about it?
Ooh, I like that question. What do you do if you like someone?
I don't know. If I like someone else's, you could get to date by someone else's who will want to be crushed.
Mm-hmm. So if I have a crush on someone, I know that I might blush when I'm around them, or I might laugh at a lot of things they say, even if it's not funny, because that's just a thing that I do. If I have a crush on someone, I want to be close to them, like body language, right? Because if I don't like someone, then my body language is going to be like really closed off, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk to them a lot. I'm always like curious about them. I want to ask them lots of questions. So those are the things I do if I like someone. So you could flip that around, right? And so if someone is asking you a lot of questions, always wanting to be around you, laughing at your jokes, even when you're like, that joke wasn't that funny, then they might have a crush on you too.
Aw. Well, that's a cute one. So, what does a consent mean? And why is it important?
Ooh, consent means mutual permission or agreement for a touch or an action to happen. So the big things there are it's mutual, meaning just because one person's into it doesn't mean that's consent. Everybody has to be into it. And we're agreeing on how it's going to happen too, right?
Yeah.
So consent, a lot of times we hear about it as being like absolutely yes or absolutely no. But some things that are important too are it has to be clear. We all have to understand what we're consenting to. It has to be communicated clearly. So you may communicate in different types of ways, but as long as everyone involved understands, then it's clear. You have to be of the right headspace. So like if we've been drinking a bunch or using drugs, like consent is hard. We can't really navigate consent in the same way because we're not in the right headspace. Or even if we're like asleep, say you make somebody dinner and then they fall asleep. Do you get to force them to eat the dinner anyway?
No.
No, because that's not consent, right? That's not okay. Like, they're not in a headspace to decide to do that.
Mhm.
It has to be something that's flexible. So, like, you can change your mind. You can say that you're into something. Have you ever been in a situation where, like, your friend is like, yo, do you want to hang out this weekend? Do you want to go to this movie? And then you say, in that moment, you say yes. But then on Saturday, you wake up and you're like, I really don't want to do a movie today.
So, do you watch any movies or?
Yeah, I like scary movies. But
Oh.
so see, like if I said, do you want to go to the movies with me? And you're like, yeah, I like going to the movies and you're cool. Like, we can hang out. But then you show up and it's like this like really scary, like gory horror film. And you're like, I don't like these movies. But I said, well, you already said yes. Would that be consensual?
Nah.
No, because I'm not letting you change your mind. And that's really important. Like that we have to respect that people can change their mind.
Yeah.
And then the last thing being that consent has to be willing. So meaning like there's no pressure to say yes or no. There's no force to say yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you think about a time where a friend was like, well, if you don't do this with me, then I don't think we should be friends anymore.
Oh.
There's going to be some pressure there, right? Like you're going to
Yeah.
feel like you can't say no. And so that's not consensual either. So consent has to be something that you feel totally like you know everything you need to know to make your decision. You feel like you are not being pushed one way or the other. And you just feel like this decision is going to feel good to me, benefit me. I feel good about it. And I can change my mind if I don't.
I mean, to be honest, I don't like a horror.
So like if I concealed that from you, if I didn't tell you about that, you'd probably be pretty bummed, right?
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
Yeah.
How can we tell that someone does or does not give consent?
I think the best way is just to clearly ask, clearly communicate what you're trying to do and what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And then clearly communicate if you're into it, if you're not into it, or even if it's a maybe. But making sure that we are communicating that. And don't assume that just because someone doesn't say no, that automatically means yes. Or don't assume that if they just don't respond at all, then you can go ahead and do it. I think that's where we get ourselves in trouble, is if we're like, well, they usually say yes, so it's probably a yes. But that's not always the case.
Like, in case like, when someone texts you a message, they will give you a response, right?
Yeah, so that's a great example. So if like you're texting with someone and you say, do you want to hang out this weekend? And they just stop answering, probably you should assume that means they don't want to hang out, right? Versus they do.
Yeah. What can we do if someone we know about unsafe relationship?
So how can you support a friend in an unsafe relationship?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of different ways. I think the most important thing to remember is that you don't have to do it all by yourself. You don't have to feel like it's your job to like fix their relationship or to be the only person supporting them, but rather that you can be one person supporting them out of many, right? And also, most importantly, it's not your job to fix it, but rather just to like be there for them. And I think the most important thing that we have to keep in mind is that when someone's in an unsafe relationship or an unhealthy relationship, one person is controlling the other person. And so if you come in and you say like, you got to break up with him. This is what you got to do. You got to like follow me. I'll show you. Then you're controlling them. So the control is just being passed over to you. And so then that person is still not feeling like they have any control or power. So whenever you're supporting someone in an unhealthy relationship, the first thing you got to do is just ask them what support looks like for them. Like what would make them feel better? What would make them feel like what you can do to help? And then try your best to do that. And then also to always communicating with the adults in your life that feel safe.
So like how people like, let's just say if someone will break up with you and you're just telling the truth, how's that do?
That is a bummer. That's going to feel really terrible, right? But I think it's important too to keep in mind that like if someone breaks up with you, that's their choice, and it wouldn't be consent for you to say, like, you're not allowed to break up with me either, right? So even though it really sucks to be told no or to be told that someone doesn't like you anymore, there are things you can do to take care of yourself, right, that don't involve pressuring that person or crossing that person's boundaries.
I mean, it's still single, right?
Yeah, and then you just keep going, and maybe you ask somebody else out. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, and then one more, last one. Okay. How do we find the right relationship for our future?
Ooh, kind of like we were saying before, like, I think identifying what are your boundaries, what are the things that cross your boundaries, what are the things that are... So one thing that I do with my students when I'm teaching them this is kind of thinking of it as, you know that game Red Light, Green Light?
Oh, yeah. I love my game. I love this.
So that game, you know, you say the person in charge running the game says green light, and then everyone can move forward until they say red light. Right? And when I play it, sometimes I'll even say you can say yellow light, which just means you can move forward, but you have to go slow. So you can think of it that way of like, what are the things that are total green lights to me? What are things that feel super good to me? And what are the things that are yellow lights where like, maybe not so good, or maybe depending on the situation, they would be okay. And then what are the things that are red lights? Like, do not cross this line. And finding a person who maybe meets a lot of those same values or expectations, but more than anything, respects that you have those boundaries, those lines.
Yeah. So it's great to see you.
Yeah. Good to meet you, Karen.
Yeah.
Thanks for your question.
Okay, so my question is, how can you tell somebody is cheating on you?
Well, kind of like we were saying before, like I think it's important to keep in mind if there are signs or signals that you don't feel happy in this relationship, pay attention to those right away. Don't be like, this is not a big deal, and just keep going. So that could be one way, is like picking up on those signals. But say we don't get any signals. We have no idea. Like this comes out of nowhere, right? I think it's hard to be able to tell, especially because like if someone's cheating on you, they're probably doing their best to make sure you don't find out, right? They're probably trying to cover their tracks. So I think that if you have a suspicion, you think they might be, it's going to be really hard for you to focus on anything else, right? It's going to be really hard for you to be like happy in that relationship once you start thinking about it. So I feel like you just gotta ask them. You just gotta like call it out, which is really hard and scary because what if you're wrong, right? So I don't know if I have super good advice other than just like listen to your gut, listen to your feelings about it.
What happens if you're dating more than one girl?
Every relationship is going to look different. So a lot of times we assume that every romantic relationship is monogamous or just one-on-one. We're just with one person. But really that's an agreement you have to have between yourself and the other person you're dating. So you have to have a conversation and decide, are we monogamous or are we not? So if you have not decided that you're monogamous and that you're just with one person and you're dating a few people, in theory, you're not doing anything wrong, right?
Right.
And that's another reason why you got to have that boundaries conversation like early on. Because if you don't talk about it, you may make a mistake without even knowing you were making a mistake, right?
Okay.
My question is, what do you do if someone force you to do something but you really don't want to do it and they get upset and mad, don't talk to you no more?
Yeah. So would that be consensual if they're forcing you and you don't want to?
If you're not ready. Yeah.
So if we say that consent, you have to be totally ready, happy, willing to do that thing, and then someone's forcing you and you're not ready, then would that be consent?
No.
No.
Mm-mm.
So if someone pushes you to do something that makes you feel uncomfortable or unsafe, I would say create some distance from that person. So maybe like stop hanging out with them, at least just to give yourself some space, and then definitely be talking to one of those adults in your life that you trust, that makes you feel safe, and have them step in, or at the very least so they know that if something escalates, they know about it, right? And they can help keep you safe that way.
My name is Edward Palmer.
Hi, Edward. Nice to meet you.
My first question is, what can you tell us catfishing online?
That's really interesting. And that's something that we're seeing a lot more now, that people are like dating online, right? Or like at least meeting people online. Catfishing online is where someone essentially poses as someone else. They like lie about their identity. And there are lots of different reasons why they might do it. But ultimately, the thing that is, I think, scary about that, or concerns me about that, is that it's not consensual. So usually when we think about consent, we just think about like me saying like, can I give you a hug? And then you saying yes or no, right? But consent is actually a lot more, there's a lot more to it than that. And one of the big things is clearly understanding what you're consenting to. So if someone is posing as someone else, you can't really clearly understand what you're consenting to with that person because it's not the real person, right? So in the same way, an example I use a lot of times is like if someone said, I made you a pizza and the pizza's in this box, and they hand you the box and you open the box and it's actually a sandwich. You might decide that you don't want to eat that sandwich because you were saying, yes, I want this pizza. So like if we don't clearly understand what we're consenting to, we can't really give consent. Now, we might still decide we want to eat the sandwich anyway, and that's up to you, but at the end of the day, that's a conversation you got to have, and that's got to be something that you decide if you're okay with that.
Why do people pretend to be someone else online?
That's a tough question because it's hard to say any one reason or another, but I think some reasons that we've seen in like news stories and stuff like that are honestly just to take advantage of someone or manipulate someone into doing something that they want them to, that they know they wouldn't otherwise do, right? So going back to that consent thing, it's like, if you know that someone's going to say no to you, but they might say yes to Elvis, if you're pretending to be Elvis, that's not being truthful. That's not being honest, right? And if they say yes, then they're not really saying yes in a way that they believe in, right? Or that they would like feel comfortable with at the end of the day, because then it gets revealed eventually that you're Edward, you're not Elvis, right? So they said yes, but they didn't know what they were saying yes to. Like I said, I can't speak to like exactly why, but at the end of the day, it's to like manipulate someone to get them to do something that they know that they maybe wouldn't do otherwise. And any kind of crossing someone's boundaries or disrespecting their consent is rooted in power and trying to control somebody too. So like one reason they might do it is because they want to feel like they have power in that situation.
How to know if that be a scam or not?
Ooh, I think if it feels too good to be true, it probably is.
Oh yeah.
That's the short answer.
Oh yeah. Why do we want to be in a relationship in the first place?
Ooh, that's a good question. Why do you want to be in a relationship?
It's about you.
Oh, okay.
Is there anybody else that can answer that question? Why they want to be in a relationship?
Yeah. My name is Genaro, and I think the reason why people want a relationship because people want to get closer to know each other, like to understand what they like, to see if they had like something in common, like if they like something that you like.
Yeah.
My name is Emon, and I think the reason why people want to be in a relationship because they maybe want to go for it and try it out and stuff and see how it works out and just try it for the first time. Might be a good one, might be a bad one.
I think people want to be in a relationship because of the personalities and something they have in common. But the first and main thing, you have to be friends first. You can't rush in a relationship. If you rush in a relationship, they gonna say no. I've seen it happen. That's just my understanding of it.
Yeah. Yeah, all of these reasons are totally legitimate, real reasons. I think we as humans, like, naturally want to be with other humans in some capacity, right? Like, we have families, we have our community, maybe you have your friends, you have the people that it just makes you feel good to be around those people. And so we go into a relationship because we want to get to know that person better. We want to have a deeper connection to that person.
I don't do texting online. I like to talk to them in person. Let's be honest.
And you can misinterpret stuff, right? Like, someone could read your text totally wrong and then they get upset, or their expectations are not being met because they read a text wrong versus in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Is there any else you want to add to the interview?
Thanks for asking that. The only thing I would add is just, like, if you're not in a relationship right now, start thinking about all of these, like, really juicy questions you asked me. Like, start thinking about how you feel about that stuff now. So then when you're in a position where you do like someone, you have a crush, you maybe want to ask them out, you already have a good idea of, like, what are your boundaries, what is comfortable and safe for you. And you've already established who the adults are in your life who you can talk to and ask for advice when you need it. So just because you're single doesn't mean you can't be thinking about what you want in a relationship and what a relationship looks like. And yeah, that's all I got.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you. Thanks for interviewing me.
Power Your Story podcast is produced by Chicago high school students with production support from After School Matters and the Creative Imposter Studios. Our theme music is by Genaro Jackson, aka DJ Sparks. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as Power Your Story Podcast, and share our show with friends or family. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.